Welcome to the eggsperiment. If you want to do this at home, and I know you're probably going to want to, you need to get some eggs, you need some vinegar, and you need a container to put the eggs in. This takes a couple days for the first step to totally take effect. So, I'll be back in a few days to tell you or to show you what really happened. So we're back, and it's been one day since I put the eggs in the vinegar. And as you can see, there's been a definite reaction going on inside the vinegar. When I feel the eggs, there you can see that the shell is starting to come off, which is what we want. Okay, we still have some more time with these eggs in the vinegar though, and then I will show you what they look like after everything is done. So we're back. It's been 48 hours and our eggs are just about ready to go. What I'm going to do is take them out of the vinegar and clean them off so you can see what they look like now that they haven't been, or now that the chemical reaction has taken place. If you take a look at your paper, question number 1, it says, what materials are needed for this experiment? Let's take a look at what we need. You need eggs. We'll come back to those in a minute, and I'll show you specifically what they look like. You need distilled water, corn syrup, food coloring, isopropyl alcohol, which is rubbing alcohol, vegetable oil, and salt. Let's go back to our eggs. You saw what they looked like when they were in the container. Now let me take one out for you and show you what it looks like now. As you can see, there's no more shell. In fact, I'll get out a regular egg and show you what it started as. This is what the egg looked like when I first put it into the vinegar. And this is one of the same eggs from the same container. Now, after soaking in vinegar for 48 hours, describe on your paper under number 2 what you can see about the egg. How has it changed? If you look carefully, you see that I can press my finger into it gently. If I hold it up to the light, you should be able to see almost through the egg. Number 3, what cell part does the outside covering of the egg represent? And then number 4. Number 4 says choose one of the tested liquids. Again, we're testing distilled water, corn syrup, food coloring, rubbing alcohol, vegetable oil, and salt water. Using an if then because statement, write a hypothesis predicting whether or not that liquid will go through the cell membrane. If you look on your paper, it says if blank, so you're choosing one of the 6 liquids, goes through or doesn't go through, circle 1, the cell membrane, then the egg will blank because blank. I'll give you a moment now to write down your hypothesis. Okay, now that you have written your hypothesis, go over to the other part of number 4 and circle the other group's predictions about each type of liquid. Notice you will have to fill in salt water and veggie oil at the bottom. And then turn your paper over to the back. Before we can actually put the eggs into the liquids that we're testing, we have to determine the mass of each egg. What we're going to be looking for is a difference in volume and a difference in mass for each day that the egg is sitting in the liquid. So to determine the mass, I've brought home the digital scale. As I go through, you make sure that you write down the mass of the egg in grams on day 1. The first egg that I'm putting in will be the egg that goes into distilled water. And the mass of this egg is 85.9 grams. So make sure you write that on your paper under distilled water, in the middle, mass of egg, 85.9 grams. The next egg is the egg that is going to go in corn syrup. And the mass of this egg is 79.1 grams. The third egg will go into food coloring. And the mass of this egg is 69.4 grams. The next egg, this is the egg that's going into rubbing alcohol. And the mass of this egg is 71.9 grams. Next we have the egg going into vegetable oil. This egg is 80.3 grams. And our last egg will be going into salt water. This egg is 82.8 grams. Take a moment and think now about what the mass of this egg might be like after the egg has soaked in its liquid for 24 hours. Do you think the mass will go up or go down if the liquid it's in goes through the cell membrane? Our next step is to use our graduated cylinder to put 150 milliliters of each liquid into the beakers. I've already put the distilled water into the beaker and put the egg in it. This beaker contains 150 milliliters of corn syrup. Corn syrup is a cooking ingredient. You've probably seen in the foods you eat or heard commercials about high fructose corn syrup. That's what this is. You buy it in the grocery store. You can see it's a pretty thick liquid. I kind of have to push the egg down a little bit to get it to go in all the way. That's corn syrup. The next liquid, I'm going to use the distilled water. Okay, so here are our eggs. We have distilled water, we have corn syrup, we have food coloring, we have rubbing alcohol, vegetable oil, and salt water. And we'll be back to see these again tomorrow and see what's happened to the egg. For your paper, under the volume of liquid on day 1, you can simply put 150 milliliters for each box. Alright, we're back, and all of our eggs have been sitting in their liquids for the last 24 hours. In just a moment, I will show you what they look like, but first, you need to copy down the mass of the egg on day 2 and the volume of liquid on day 2. So, I'll give you a moment to copy this information. Distilled water, volume, started at 150 milliliters and is now 140 milliliters. Corn syrup, started at 150 and is now 165. Food coloring started at 150 and now is 140. Rubbing alcohol started at 150 and is now at 168. Vegetable oil started at 150 is now at 141 milliliters. And salt water started at 150 milliliters and now in the container there's 146 milliliters. And on to the masses. On the first day, the distilled water egg started at 85.9 grams, and the second day is 91.1 grams. The corn syrup egg, 79.1, went to 52.2. The egg that was in food coloring started at 69.4 and went up to 77.7 grams. The egg that was in rubbing alcohol was at 71.9 and is now at 44.8 grams. The egg that was in vegetable oil was at 80.3 grams and is now 81 grams. And lastly, the egg that was in salt water started at 82.8 grams and now is at 90.9 grams. Let's take a look at what these eggs actually look like, and on your paper you're going to be filling in the qualitative observations. Starting with the egg that was in distilled water. Take a look at what this looks like. Now the egg that was in corn syrup. And if you compare the two, they started out looking relatively similar. You can see that the egg that's in corn syrup looks a little different now. Now the egg that was in food coloring. Clearly something happened here. Don't just notice obvious things like color, also notice size, whether it appears to be full or empty. Next, the egg that was in rubbing alcohol. Another very obvious difference here. This egg is much firmer than it was before. The egg that was in vegetable oil. And lastly, the egg that was in salt water. So now that you've taken a look at all of these eggs, I know some of you are dying to see what's inside of them. So I'll take a moment and show you what's inside a couple of the eggs. Okay, looking inside the egg that was soaking in water, distilled water with food coloring. Let's see if the food coloring went completely through the egg or if it just colored the outside membrane. As you can see, even inside the egg, there is definitely blue liquid. So the food coloring and the distilled water went completely through that egg. The next egg. Everyone always wants to know what happened to the egg that was in rubbing alcohol. So let's take a look. Yummy. So, if you look closely, you can see that the egg has been essentially cooked. Rubbing alcohol cooks an egg the same way putting it on a stove will cook an egg. It denatures the proteins, turning the white part of the egg white, and the yolk looks different than it did when it was in just the uncooked raw egg. No, you cannot eat this. It would be very toxic to you, as you would be ingesting rubbing alcohol along with the egg. Okay, those are the only two that I'm going to cut open. Please make sure you fill in your qualitative observations on your paper, and then the other 3 boxes we'll discuss in just a moment.